to today's session, and welcome to Meet the Firms Week. We're excited to have you here. I'm excited we've got a large audience filing in across the United States and even globally as well. I'm filing in to hear Mike Duffy and the team from Wiley CPA Excel talk about strategies around the CPA exam. This is Jeff Phillips. Like I said, I'm going to be your host today, and I'm also going to take your questions and ask your questions to today's presenter, Mike Duffy with Wiley CPA Excel. Guys, we've got a great week of webinars for you covering a lot of important accounting career topics. And it doesn't matter if you're a sophomore, a master's student, or even an experienced professional. The topics this week are topics that you're typically not going to find on college campuses. It ranges about technology that you're going to need to be a successful new hire or accountant in general. That's going to be tomorrow afternoon session. Just a ton of great content this week. We're really excited and feel like this is the best lineup we have ever had for these events. So you can go to meetthefirmsweek.com, click on the webinars button, and that'll give you a list of all the webinars that we have this week. They're each an hour long, and they're all at 11 and 2 Eastern Time each day. So sign up, and even if you can't attend a webinar, if you just register, we'll be sure to send you the link to the webinar once it's recorded. All right, so we're going to ask a couple questions of you guys. The first thing we're going to do is a quick poll, and I'd like to fire this poll off, and you can answer it. And what it is what is your experience level? So you can see the answers there if you're a freshman or sophomore, junior or senior, a master's student, college grad but haven't started your accounting career, or college grad with accounting work experience. Trying to get an understanding of if you're working or not currently. So we'll give everybody a minute just to fill out that information. Just a couple of other details. If you've been around Accounting Fly, you know that we're all about furthering your careers in accounting. We try to bring content to accounting students and accounting professionals that you wouldn't find anywhere else. And it's important for us to know what it is that you're looking for. What kind of data are you looking to understand that would help your career? And so we always welcome your feedback. Typically, the webinars that we do and our blogs that we do are actually feedback based off of feedback from students or our accounting users. So thanks, and keep the good feedback coming in. And lastly, if you haven't built a profile on Accounting Fly, we would love for you to do that. Your profile and your resume will be distributed to all of the participating firms in your state. Secondly, it's a lifetime career profile. That means whether you have a job currently and you're not looking, having a profile on Accounting Fly, it's searched by accounting recruiters across industry, government, across accounting firms. So it's important to be on Accounting Fly. We always say you should be on LinkedIn, you should be on Accounting Fly if you're a financial professional, financial student, because it helps get you found by recruiters. Plus, it doesn't hurt. One profile means you can apply to a lot of different jobs. Lastly, if you have been included, if you have a profile, you'll be included in our monthly $500 scholarship drawing. We pick at random a completed profile, and we send a $500 check for hopefully to be used in form of a scholarship. Okay, real quick, let's look at the results here. I think I can close the poll and share the results. Here we go. So Mike, Jeff from CPA Excel, you know who you're talking to now. I would say the majority of users on the call of our attendees are either junior through master's in college. Of course, a big chunk have graduated as well. I always get to know who's out there on the call. Thanks everybody for submitting. We had a great turnout for that. Excellent. All right, next, let's see. Well, as far as the webinars go, this is one that is always the one that is the most attended, hands down, and it's about the CPA exam, a fairly important topic to all of us on the call, I would say. Before I introduce our speaker, Mike Duffy, let's review the tool that you're using, the GoToWebinar panel. The right-hand menu, you can expand and collapse it with the orange arrow button. you've got a question panel, and you know what I'm about to ask you if you've ever been on one of these before, so start firing away. Use your question panel so that you know how to ask a question, because it's going to come in handy later on. On your question panel, go ahead and type in what school you attend or you graduated from. I'd love to be able to read those out. So if you can just go into your question panel, type your school, and hit enter. I can tell Mike and Jeff who all is on the call today. So guys, we have students from University of Texas at Dallas, and East Stroudsburg, University of Pennsylvania, Johns Hopkins, Florida Atlantic, CSU, Capella, Suffolk and Boston, Mass. Tracy, did I get that right? Lynchburg College, University of Hawaii, awesome. Nova Southeastern, thanks, fellow Floridian. Rutgers, Central Florida, Cal Poly, Georgia State, Iowa State, Florida Memorial, DePaul, South Dakota, Pittsburgh, National, Benedictine, Walsh College, Assumption College, DePaul. Well, we got people from all over. Texas A&M International, Keller Graduate School of Management, UTD. Man, there's a lot of neat schools represented today. Thank you all for being here. University of Kansas. That's good to see you guys on here. University of Michigan. All right. So thanks for everybody doing that. That's fun. All right, one last one. University of Cincinnati and Florida A&M, University of FAMU. Go Rattlers. Used to live in Tallahassee. Thanks, everybody. Awesome. So now you know how to ask questions, and that's important because you're going to need to ask questions of our presenter today. I will field your questions, or you'll be hearing from Jeff Johnson, who works at Wiley CPA Excel as well. He'll be answering your questions, the ones that don't get asked to Mike at the end. Mike's going to go for 40 minutes, and then we'll leave about 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. If we run a few minutes over and you got to slip out, maybe you have to get back to class, that's no problem. We may go just 1 or 2 minutes over. Finally, today's speaker is our good friend Mike Duffy. Mike's a CPA, and he's currently the Director of Business Development at Wiley CPA Excel CPA Review. He is responsible for the product and all business development for the CPA Review, e-learning products. Mike's going to tell you a little bit about himself, but I'll tell you, he started his career at PwC audit practice after he graduated from Western Illinois. He has a BBA in accounting and is a CPA. But prior to joining CPA Excel, Mike was the National Program Director for Convisor Duffy CPA Review for 15 years, and the Director of Marketing for Becker Convisor CPA Review for 5 years. He currently sits on the Beta Alpha Psi Advisory Forum and the Western Illinois Advisory Board. And Mike lives, and I know you're all going to be jealous, or many of you, but Mike lives in San Diego, California. Mike, I'm glad you're here. It's always an adventure, especially right before we start these webinars, but we always get it done, right? So
That's right.
Yeah, Mike, I'm excited to have you. If we have any technical issues or anything like that, I'll jump in and just interrupt you real quick, but hopefully that won't happen, and I'll see you on the other side for a Q&A. Okay, Mike?
That sounds great. Thank you, Jeff.
Cool.
All right, okay. Well, first off, I am sitting here with my colleague, Jeff Johnson, so intermittently from time to time he may jump in and chime in and throw out some of his thoughts as well. He's been with me for some 25 years as we've helped students over the years pass the CPA exam. Now, yes, I live in San Diego. I noted that there were no Western Illinois University leathernecks on the call today, but that's okay. But the good news is I've decided to do this from a cold climate. I am now in Hoboken, New Jersey. So, so I look forward to my return back to San Diego on Thursday. So with that, what are we here to talk about? Obviously, we're here to talk about the CPA exam, and I've spent some, after my world in Pricewaterhouse, spent some 25 years in this process. And it's a very exciting process. I shouldn't say that. It is an exciting process to complete. Once you obtain your CPA, it's quite a thrill. So we're going to kind of jump right into talking a little bit about the exam, some strategies and whatnot. So I'm going to start flipping along on some slides and talking to you. As I look at accounting majors, I could never understand anybody who would go through an accounting curriculum and not sit for the CPA exam. It's kind of like going to law school and not sit for the bar exam. It really becomes that distinguishing factor in your early career, and is also very relevant as you move up the ladder at a corporation. In fact, it's so critically important. I look at my three friends that I graduated with. and we all went off into different areas. One opened up a series of oil lube centers. Another one went into investment banking. But the nice thing is whenever you have a CPA, the doors are opened up for you to do virtually anything. You know, in the business community, you're highly respected, and it's just worth the effort to get this thing done. And once you're a CPA, they can't take it away from you. So with that, I say right there, should I take the CPA exam? I think I just kind of launched right into that. That's kind of as I call it, it's a no-brainer. But a couple of critical things. We need to talk about your plan. This does require some planning. Talk a little bit about exam sequencing, test-taking strategies, also a suggested study approach, give you my thoughts on that. Interesting, in the old days, we didn't really have to think about our exam site strategies, but we do need to discuss those as well. And last but not least, the Prometric testing center environment. So we'll talk a little bit about each of those. So we have about, give or take, 33 or 4 minutes, whatever we have, but we're going to move through that relatively swiftly. So should I take the exam? Yeah, that's simple. Financial rewards is just a staggering difference in financial. You will make millions more if you are a CPA than if you're a non-CPA. It really is that simple. I think one of the exciting things, when I passed the exam myself, I was at Pricewaterhouse, received a call from my brother, and he said, congratulations, Mike Duffy, CPA. And that was just an incredibly rewarding day. Not only have you passed the exam, quite honestly, in my head, it was immediately, I'm smart, I'm worth more money. The reality was I was the same goof I was the day before, but for some reason the attachment of the CPA onto your resume was just incredibly, incredibly rewarding. When I talk about taking the CPA exam, I've heard this comment from students before. They said, well, I don't really want to be in public accounting. Well, as I said, initially I was at Pricewaterhouse, then I moved over to a corporation for a couple of years, helped take a company public. And the reality is everybody I hired had to be a CPA. So when I'd get resumes in for the corporate accounting area that I was staffing, I would simply look at a resume with a CPA, would go into an interview pile, and those without would not. So we actually use the CPA as not even if you're going into public, but we use it as a benchmark to give me a profile as to who you are and your willingness to put in a lot of hard work to prove yourself and to pass an exam. And it is a very, very passable exam if approached in the proper way. So the reality is in public accounting, you have to have it. In corporate accounting, governmental, you absolutely have to have it. When I say that, I mean in public, you're going to sign opinions. It's just part of the process. But in corporate, most of us that leave the firms end up going to corporations. So we are the ones that are hiring you. And when we hire you, we're looking for something to distinguish you, and the CPA exam does that for us. So with that in mind, regardless of where you're going after your career is over, or by the way, if you're already currently employed somewhere, get the CPA. It's going to add a whole lot to your credibility and your job opportunities. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about your plan. Now, when I talk about your plan, we actually go through our entire life, literally, with no background in any type of planning. We have no time management classes to speak of in college. I've talked to students over the last 25 years. I've almost asked this every year at a campus just to get the pulse, and someone will raise their hand. They've had a 2-hour class on time management. So the reality is we need to master a plan in order to make sure that you're ready to pass the exam. And if we don't have a plan, it's really simple. If we don't plan, we are ultimately planning to fail. So this is something that I really take seriously. So we need to focus in on a plan. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a study that was done many years ago, and it's still relevant to this day, and that's called the Harvard study. And what happened at the Harvard study is that they took a survey of students that had graduated or prior to graduation. They asked them how many had written goals and a written plan, and 3% of the graduating class had that. Well, 20 years fast forward, they reviewed that group of 3%, and those that 3% was worth more financially, more than the entire remaining 97% of the graduating class of Harvard of that year. So what was really interesting is that that written goal is what drove them to that success. And unfortunately, without having time management or other skills in your background, you really need to take advantage of what we do to help you put together a plan to make sure that you're progressing toward the goal of passing versus just staggering along and ultimately not passing. So when I talk about a plan, this is kind of actually an extract from one of our brochures. And, here is what this student says. He found, this to be extremely comprehensive and helpful, but it's important to note that he places full faith in the CPA Excel material and personalized study plan because I'm confident that it will work. Again, he took 2 sections at 98 and 95. So this student is able to follow along with a plan, and this is a plan that we have mastered. So it really doesn't require you to think or put a plan together. It's there for you, and it's there for every student to do. How does it work? Let's take a quick snapshot. This is how tricky it is. Tell me what day you want to start studying. Tell me what day you want to sit, and I'll tell you how many hours a week it's going to take you to get to the goal of passing. And one of the games that I've always looked at in software design and development is, what can I do to provide true metrics that can help our students? And one of the metrics here is that this number of 14 hours a week comes from the previous 5,000 students that went through the course that passed this section. I know down to the second how much time the students that passed put in order to hit that goal. And this is called modeling. And if you copy or model what somebody successful has done, you will produce similar results. So here's the exam planner, which is designed to follow along with what other people have done that will get you through the test. Now, moving along. Students ask me this all the time. I want to give you a brief snapshot of the hours that it's going to take. Now, keep in mind, you're studying for one section at a time. 130 hours, 150 hours, it's a pretty rough workout financial, but it's a lot of material. So that's probably, obviously, our toughest area. Then we look at auditing, and we have 80 hours, so you can look at a program like that and literally study over 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and put in 12 to 15 hours a week, and you're ready to sit for that exam. So this is an overview. As you can see, give or take, it's somewhere around 350 plus hours to be comprehensively prepared to pass. And this, once again, is metrics that comes directly out of our system that's from students who had previously passed the exam. Now, I want to talk very quickly about the requirements for sitting for the exam. And I throw this screen up. It deals with Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Delaware. And the reason I throw it up is, as you can see, it has accounting hours needed, 30 for one school, 24 undergrad, right? So there's varying requirements in each state. So you as a student, as you prepare for the exam, need to be aware of those. So I encourage you to go to the state boards of accountancy. We have a website here down at the bottom, NASBA.org/CPA exam. And that NASBA handles a number of the states, and this will provide you with information and links to the applicable state that you might be sitting in. But generally speaking, some have residency requirements, as you see, some don't. So I throw the slide only so that you're aware that you need to be paying attention to the state in which that you're planning on sitting in. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the exam. Oh, here's this ugly screen. Look at all that stuff they want you to know. Auditing, attestation, it gives you the 6 major categories of the exam that the examiners focus on. But the reason I actually presented this to you is most of this material, if you look at auditing, we cover this in your college classes, and if not, we're going to cover it in the review courses. But there are some other areas that I'd like to bring your attention to, and that's if you're sitting for the financial accounting and reporting section. A lot of students and a lot of curriculum do not require you to have governmental and not-for-profit accounting as part of your degree. Now, as you can see, if you look at those 2 sections, they comprise between 16 and 24% of your financial accounting and reporting section of the exam. So if you certainly hadn't had a governmental class, or if you're still in school, I just strongly suggest that you take an elective or take an opportunity to grab a governmental accounting and not-for-profit class. When you look at 25% of FAR, that's a value proposition that I encourage you to take advantage of. I mean, if you don't, of course, we prepare our students for it and present material that cover all the governmental topics, but it doesn't hurt to have a little more refined session at your university. Now, when I look over at the regulations section, similarly, here's where we have some unusual information as far as what's tested on the exam. So when I look at the regulations section, we're talking about 60% is tax, and the other 40% is a combination at the top two levels of ethics and business law. But many schools, you're only required to take federal taxation. You'll take an individual class, say. Well, what I want to point out is if you did not take corporate entities, look down there at the bottom, you're seeing up to 24% of your regulation is federal taxation for entities, as well as we have some other federal taxation laws that are covered in the federal tax process and taxation property areas. So if you're in school, take advantage of those classes and take an entity's class in taxation if you have the opportunity to do so. Once again, do we focus you in on the key areas within federal that you need to know? Absolutely. But having said that, there's nothing bad about having that entire broad background on federal taxation as well. So I encourage you to take advantage of those. Let's talk a little bit about exam scoring. And in exam scoring, this is a mean way to grade. In the old days, you never had a score between 69 and 75. You failed with a 69 or you passed with a 75. This is a little rougher. They literally have put out scores of 74, which means you missed it by one multiple choice question. So that can be pretty brutal. So the goal here is that what they're expecting you to do is to hit a 75, which basically is you have a minimum level of knowledge required for an entry-level accountant. Now, the nice thing about the exam nowadays is you can pass one section at a time. For a lot of states, just not that many years back, you had to pass 2 or more sections at a time. So this is nice. And the clock starts to run. You have 18 months to complete all 4 parts of the CPA exam. So with that in mind, we need to pass one part, wrap up the other in 18 months, and that way we don't lose a section that we have already passed. So with that, let's go on and talk a little bit about the registration tips for the exam parts that you plan on preparing for. Registering for only 2 parts gives you some flexibility, so I encourage you to be cautious and register only for a couple of parts at a time. Some of the estimates to receive your notice to sit, that's obviously one of the key steps in this process, can take up to 6 to 8 weeks. What I'm finding is actually some of these that are operated when you register through NASBA, through the state boards, actually they're accelerating quite a bit. Sometimes literally within a week or 2 you receive your notice to schedule your examination at Prometric Testing Center. So once again, I don't want you to get caught off guard. I want to make sure that you have the longest probability in which you can receive your notice to sit. Next, the important thing is planning. Once again, it all gets down to planning. And you can sit for, as you see here, the green are the months in which you can sit for the exam. And then the red are what they call the dark months, which they do not offer the exam in those windows. So when you're planning to sit for the exam, you want to make sure you're taking advantage of that schedule and how they can best fit with your personal schedule, both work and school. This is just a quick screenshot. This is what it looks like. Your notice to sit. This is what you'll receive. And it says, great, here's your date. And here you go. So I'd show you that. Next, let's talk about the weighting on the CPA exam. This is the next most important area. And we have 4 sections of the CPA exam, as you can see. We have our auditing first at 4 hours, 60% multiple choice, 40% task-based simulations. I want to focus in on this for just a moment because it's pretty important to see the split. So in auditing 60-40, if you go down to FAR 60-40 regulation, far right is 60-40. The only aberration in there is our Business Environment and Concepts, BEC, and we have 85% multiple choice, and this is, as you get down to the bottom, you see it has 15% written communication. That's the only section you have to write anything. And it's basically 3 essays, of which 2 are thrown, or 1 is thrown out, and they're only actually grading 2 of those essays. And we'll talk a little bit about strategy later when I think you should take the BE section of the CPA exam and why. Okay, so with that, one of the keys in your preparation process will be a simulated exam. This is something that a lot of students are not exposed to do. This is actually a screenshot of what I call the software. This is an exam plan for a student. It says, you know, basically you're supposed to do these assignments on these days, and you're supposed to complete them here, and here's your grade. And then ultimately, in that process is a simulated exam. And literally, it is a simulated exam in the exact format as the CPA exam that you would get at the Prometric testing site. So these are the instructions you receive. Once again, it's all about what you do in practice, you do in the game. So I like students to be familiar with the real thing. And in our course, through every step you take, you are actually seeing the CPA exam interface every single day. So when you get there, nothing new. What you're looking at here is the format of a multiple choice question. Nope, there's no A, B, C, D. This is the way it's set up. You know, they give you a timer. You have to work through the questions. It's a very kind of old-fashioned looking screen, not much better than a DOS prompt of 20 years ago, but this is what Prometric and the AICPA concluded on how the questions will be presented for you from a multiple choice standpoint. Now, this is the other thing that you're not familiar with, and obviously in our course we put students through hundreds of these, and this is what we call task-based simulations. Now, why task-based simulations are important to understand is these are kind of long multiple choice problems is what I call those. So in this one you can see we have 5 items being asked of us. This is an auditing question, and you as a student will read it. You're allocated a certain amount of time for it. We're going to go over here, and next to one, we're just going to click on that box, and we're going to read what it's asking us. If the auditor does not identify a material misstatement that exists in an assertion, then I click that box. I say, which of these 6 or 7 or 8 choices do I drop into that box? So as you can see, kind of an unusual format question. In addition, they have questions that are research-based. So you click on a research tab, and you open up a book on here and do a research question. So it's really important that you understand, get familiar with the task-based simulation portion, because it's going to represent 40% of your test. Next, exam sequence. This is really an important one for me. I talk to students a lot about it, and it kind of flies in the face sometime of logic. But generally speaking, we always like to do things that we're familiar with first. Unfortunately, that can backfire on you when you're taking the CPA exam. So I call it the big rock theory, which you may have heard of. It's been expressed in other ways, but simply put, it's you have a bottle and you have several big rocks and you have a big pile of sand, and it says, how do you get everything in here? And the reality is you put the big rocks in first, and you drop the little sand in later, which just fills in around the big rocks. So that's the big rock theory. Well, what we need to do is we need to take the section of the exam that is the most difficult, which for virtually everybody is financial accounting and reporting. Now, why is that important? It's important because once you pass financial accounting and reporting, your 18-month clock starts to run. But the good news is it's all downhill from there. The other sections are just, quite frankly, easier. So there's one unique exception to this process, and I call it the BEC exception. And it has the highest pass rate. So students have a tendency to say, I want to take BEC first. But what I tell them to do is take it last, because it's the easiest, and remember, this is the one with the essays. And the essays have been known to come from financial accounting and auditing topics. So even though it's not a technically graded area, if you're not familiar with those topics or haven't recently reviewed those within the last 6 months, 9 months, it just may catch you off guard and make that a whole lot more difficult and just cause anxiety that you don't need. So that's why I encourage you to take the BEC section last. Okay, let's talk about some really important items. I'm taking a look at my clock here. I think we're moving along okay. Mr. Johnson?
Clock looks good.
Okay, good. So let's move into two other critical areas in pass rates and pretest questions. As you can see on here, we have our pass rate information for each of the windows, and the average here, what do we got on the averages? We have the cumulative is important, and this is once again what I was speaking to you about. And by the way, someone would say, well, look at auditing, low pass rate. Once again, much easier to study for it. People tend to put less time in than they need, and that's what gets them caught short. So with that, let's look at the pass rates for BEC. Look at that, almost 56% for the year. Now, like I said, you might want to just take that just to go, wow, I passed the BEC section, but I'm telling you, you're really going to want to make sure you get through your FAR section before you do that. But the good news is 50% of the people are passing these sections, right? So this is really an exciting opportunity to realize this is not some unachievable goal. So with that, I want to move along to the next screen here. Hold on one second. No, I have oh, there we go. Mine locked up for a second. So here, a little heading, not every question counts. And why I'm talking to you about this is actually from a perspective standpoint, it's quite fascinating to look at the amount of questions on the CPA exam. And let's just for a second, let's take a look over at the FAR column. There's two types of questions that you're going to get exposed to, and you're going to get exposed to operational and something called the pre-test question. So when we look here at financial accounting and reporting, we're talking about 90 multiple choice that they're going to be asking you, which 15 are not even going to be graded. So you're literally being graded on 75 questions for your entire FAR section of the CPA exam. So when we talk about certain critical steps and strategies that you're going to need to implement when you're in your study process, this is going to come into play significantly. So let's now take a look over at the regulation section. We're literally talking 72, of which 12 are pre-test. And perhaps I should explain pre-test a little bit better. What the examiners like to do is they like to throw you questions, and they like to see what you know about certain topics that really aren't being tested yet. So it's kind of, as they call it, pre-test question. So they might, a lot of students will get IFRS questions that are complicated, and they say, oh, a lot of IFRS questions are in the exam. No, they're in your pre-test bucket. They're not even using much of the IFRS in the exam, period. The only time they're mostly using it is from their pre-test question standpoint. So it's really fascinating to look at that in our FAR section, we have 75 multiple choice out of the 90 that are graded. So basically, when you look at 15 questions and you don't know what they're talking about, it's a good chance it's pre-test. And then when you get down to your task-based simulation, remember I showed you that one example of a task-based simulation, you're going to get 7 tabs. And of the 7, one of those are also a pre-test. So as a candidate, I've talked to students before going through it, and they said, wow, I was looking at a tax question, and they asked some type of thing that came out about trust taxation. I went, well, what did that say to you? Did you really cover that in college much? No. Did you cover it in the review course? No. I said, so what did you think? He said, as soon as I read it, I thought, this is a good chance of being a pre-test question. So I said, what did you do? He said, well, I put minimal effort in. I just wanted to make sure I got something down in case it was actually a gradable question. But once again, this is all about the strategies as well. One final point on this over to BEC. I just want to point out the structure there. We have 60 multiple choice graded, 12 pre-test. Isn't that amazing? That includes managerial, accounting, IT, economics, financial budgeting and forecasting. A number of topics are in there, and there's only 60 multiple choice questions. And when you get past BEC, what do you have down below? Task-based sims, that's essays, 3 of them. 1 isn't graded. Once again, usually when you look at the question, you get a pretty good instinct of which one isn't being graded. And that's what you're looking at. They're looking for proper business English, spelling, punctuation, just a professional communication approach, which they, in fact, give examples on their website, the AICPA does, which is a resource you can use as well. Okay, let's talk a little bit about when you're at the exam site, how I think you should apply your strategies. I'd allocate the minimum time to multiple choice questions. So if they give you a minimum, maximum kind of strategy there, it can be a minimum of 1 minute and 20 seconds up to a maximum of around 2 minutes a question. I like to keep the multiple choice to a minimum. The reason is, in multiple choice, some computational can take the full amount allocated time, of course. But the reality is a lot of the multiple choice questions, you'll start reading through it, and quite quickly you'll have a grasp that, yeah, I'm pretty good on this, and you're going to answer it, and you're going to answer it under the time that's allocated. The reason I like to allocate more time to the task-based simulations is that the format is just unique, and that it can cause a little bit of stress. So you want to just allocate a little more time to the task-based sims. And remember, that's 40% of the exam. And one of the most common mistakes on exams is we answer a multiple choice question and move on, and we want to run back and review things. Well, statistically, if you change an answer, you have a 95% chance of changing it from a correct to an incorrect answer. So usually go with your first instinct and what you chose, and just continue moving on the exam with that process. I want to talk real quick about a case study. And the case study are those people that I've actually gone through the exam preparation process with. I chatted with them, counseled them prior to their exam, and followed up with them to just find out exactly if they experienced what I thought they would experience that we provide in the review course and teach them, if that is what occurred. And I want to give you an example of actually multiple students have had this exact experience. So they sat and they took their first block of multiple choice on their exam, right? We have a couple of testlets, 3 testlets. And depending on which section, you either have 30 or 24 in your first testlet. They said, I got through it relatively easy. And I thought, well, that's not bad. And they moved on to their next testlet. Then lo and behold, they had all these unusual questions popping up. They had 5, 6, 7, 8 IFRS questions, things that they really didn't think were a big deal on the exam. Now they're seeing this pile of questions. Well, basically what happens is this. The first testlet, 30, is going to be a reasonable distribution of questions. The student that performs extremely well on that is probably going to immediately see in their next testlet a higher frequency of the pre-test questions. So when they opened up that second testlet, they started to get a little nervous, but the reality is most of those weren't even being graded, or a good chunk of those. So the student completed the exam and called me and was a little concerned, said, yeah, I followed exactly what you said, but it was really uncomfortable to see that in the second testlet. And both students that I followed with this ended up having between a 90 and a 93 percentile. So you really need to be aware of exam strategies and understand when they throw those pre-test questions, don't panic. Use your logic. Have we taught you in class? Have you learned it in college? Is it showing up as something you're completely alien to you? Well, then there's a good question. Or is it something so new that you're like, boy, I don't know what this really is. I know they talked about this generally in the review class, but not to this level of detail. Well, if it's to that level of detail, then the odds are it is not a operational, it's a pre-test question. Now, let's talk about Prometric real quick. This is kind of fun. This is what it looks like. Here's a student walking in with his bag. A couple of things you need to be aware of. 2 types of IDs. You're going to be assigned a locker. The biometric check-in. There's a photo identification and a fingerprint process that you're going to have to go through. This is every single time you walk in and out of that room, they're going to re-fingerprint you, so it's a rather rigorous process. They empty your pockets, and they force you to go through a metal detector scan. Now, when I talk about emptying your pockets, this is really, really crazy. So as you see here, we have a gentleman sitting behind this gentleman, and you're required to pull your pockets inside out for them to inspect it to see that you're not bringing anything into the exam or attempting to cheat. So, other things, there's no paper or pencils. There are these things called note boards, so they have these new kind of new kind of technology that if you once you use your board up and you want to exchange it, you walk outside, you exchange it, go back through a finger scan to go back in the room. So you just have to be aware that all of this will occur. The other thing is on your exam, you have to allocate time in the exam to a survey. There's instructions and a survey. They give you 30 minutes, but that's not a bonus 30 minutes to get through and add that to your exam. It is just a time allocated to doing that survey and other information. Now, let's talk about my suggested study approach. You know, I've been doing this for a long time and working with students very closely, and it really is, it's very logical. It is follow a plan. It's work all the questions in exam format, and you want to answer 90% plus correct at least once. You want to take full practice exams, and the reason is I've done studies over the year, and it's quite fascinating that a student can open up a topic that has, say, 10 practice questions. They answer the first couple and they get them wrong, but in the process they start learning. And by the end of the session, they're getting better and better and better. Now, they go back to a full CPA exam and it catches them off guard because you shift from topic to topic very quickly. So only in taking a practice exam can you start to train your mind in shifting to the new topics and make sure that when you take it under this format, it may reveal other weaknesses that you didn't realize you still had. So taking full practice exams that provide you with the metrics and feedback is really critical. And the final step in that is, review areas of weakness. Now, one of the biggest flaws students have is they keep working on topics they're comfortable with. Well, that's not what's going to cause you to fail. It's going to cause you to fail are those areas that you're uncomfortable with. So dig in, spend time on them, and don't be afraid to at least fight those up to a minimal competency. Get it up to 50 or 60% so other areas that you're more skilled at will allow you to, will offset those scores, so to speak. So some final thoughts. I look at this somewhat pragmatically, and that is, what are pass rates? I just told you they're 50% almost on every section. That's pretty amazing. 15 years ago, they were in the 25% range. So we have a 50% pass rate. The reality is a lot of students to this day are still not preparing using professional programs. Most are, but there are still a chunk that are kind of doing it, whether you want to call it on the economical side, grabbing a set of books only. But this is too important. This is a career game changer for you, so you really have to make sure you do it the right way. So pass rates, those are good. You've gone to college. You've covered the vast majority of what's on the CPA exam in your college classes. And for that you have not covered, we're covering that in our comprehensive review courses. So if you've gone to college, you've gone through our prep course, and you know the pass rates are 50%, you see things that are very unfamiliar to you, once again, they probably are falling into the pre-test bucket. And hopefully you'll take seriously the comments I made earlier, working 90% plus questions correctly at least once, taking simulated exams. It's not easy to do. You have to sit in a room by yourself for 3 or 4 hours and actually go through the process. But there is nothing better than doing in practice what you're going to ultimately be required to do in the game. So this is just kind of obvious training. So with that, I think we're moving pretty close to our board here. I just want to throw out, I have a slide here that talks a little bit about our Wiley CPA Excel review course. This program has been selected by a major Big Four firm for use by their staff. As you see, we have pretty high pass rates, so I'm pretty confident that you will do extremely well with this. One of the keys is the types of software and the design that are built into the course. Practicing questions, ask anybody, it's key. So we have lots of questions, both multiple choice, task-based to help you. I do a unique approach called bite-sized lessons. One of the keys to learning is keeping your study sessions to a minimum, not sitting there for 4 hours listening to one lecture. So we're really designed to do like 15 to 30-minute sessions. So you pop it open and you're doing a section on pensions. Well, you review the pensions, you work questions in the area, you watch video presentations from top faculty in the country, work through that material and see how you're performing, and if you're performing weekly, you continue to refine your studies in that area. And the price that we do charge students, there's no expiration date, and because we're technology driven, the content's always updated, no additional fees. So those are some of the key features. I want to also throw up on here a slide with my email. So you as students, feel free to reach out to me and send me any of your questions. I'll be happy to discuss those with you as well. And with that, I think we're about closing our time window here, so I'm going to open this back up to Jeff as well. So give me 1 second here.
Hey, Mike. Yep, and you don't need to do anything. I'm back on. Mike, we had a handful of questions for you. Luckily, Jeff has been in the background and answered just about every single one of them, so thanks, Jeff. But I do have a couple of interesting questions. And Mike, the first one is pretty theoretical here, but I'd like to get your opinion because I know you have a lot of knowledge about the CMA. One of our attendees wants to know, when it comes to pursuing a career in corporate accounting, which I take that to mean in-house, private industry, Mike, what's the benefits, or how should I be thinking about the CPA versus the CMA? What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
Okay. That's a great question. Certainly, when you get down to certifications, the CPA and the CMA exam, both high-level, highly recognized exams. So, I know this may sound strange, but, and I haven't done it myself, although I want to and have wanted to for some time, is to take both the CPA and the CMA. Now, when you're in a corporate setting, certainly a management accounting, a CMA, is a highly accepted credential, right? So that is a strong value proposition that you bring to a corporation if you get a CMA. Certainly, if you get a CPA, you're also going to have that level of recognition. Now, it's kind of interesting when you look at the CPA exam, we cover managerial, certain cost accounting type content in that exam as well. That's why I kind of encourage students to at least do one of the exams, whether you do CPA first, then flip over and do this CMA, because you're covering, the managerial and whatnot, or go the other direction, do managerial, knock that out, and then come back over to CPA. So I know I've been challenged many times with, well, if I only could pick one. And that really is a tough question for me to answer, because some corporations view the CMA from a corporate accounting standpoint to be very important, but many see the CPA as a credential that is at a minimum equal to the CMA, and in some perspectives broader, right? So there's auditing, there's tax, there's law, right? So there are a number of other things on the CPA exam not covered on the CMA exam. So I can only encourage you to do both. If you're only going to focus on one, certainly I wouldn't discourage you from just doing the CMA. But if you do take CMA first, I encourage you to run over then and go after the CPA. I also want to add, Jeff Johnson wrote me a note across the table. He goes, about a question on it, is the CPA exam, CPA Excel, is it as comprehensive as other reviews? And quite frankly, yes, we cover everything. From the standpoint of from content. Go ahead, Jeff. Mr. Johnson,
I was just saying, the couple of questions I got as far as how comprehensive is it. We don't cover the remedial accounting topics, things like debits and credits. There's a certain expectation of what a candidate needs to know prior to beginning their preparation. Maybe, Mike, you can talk a little more about that.
Good point. Thanks, Jeff. Actually, it's a great question, and we're actually addressing that in the software nowadays, and that is, there's a certain level of expectation. You've gone through accounting. You're now getting ready for financial accounting and reporting. You're looking at a receivables question. I assume at this point you know what a receivable is, debit, credit. We actually do cover it still. We talk notes payable, bonds payable. We go through long-term debt, short-term debt, all that. And we've actually taken another step, and that is we've added into our software something called deep dive videos. Now, what those are is we have the standalone program, and you look at a multimedia lecture covering a key topic. You work on questions. You have a textbook material. You can have mentors you can send questions to. Practice CPA exam questions, all there for you. But in some areas, I know students just flat out have difficulty. So we're looking at consolidation, say, and we cover it in the lectures. We have an outstanding faculty member, KPMG professor of accounting, one of the master instructors, he's outstanding. Really brings consolidations to just a beautiful, clean understanding. But if the students, we know they have trouble there, so then we also added a deep dive video, which is even a further level of hand holding. So we do those, I guess I'd call it kind of remedial in a way, in the more complicated areas to bring you back to, okay, let's start at step one, and let's move you through that. So we're hoping that in a complicated area where students have difficulty, we're there to give you that base or remedial training. As Jeff said, yeah, when we're talking extremely simplistic types of computations, yeah, there's a certain level of expectation, but I would say without a doubt from a comprehensive standpoint, we're more comprehensive than anybody, in that not only do we provide the core lectures and material, but we actually have the deep dive videos to assist in areas where students have trouble.
Mike, do you mind putting the slide that had the 800 number up again, and it had a price and I think an 800 number? We just had a couple questions. Yeah, okay. There we go.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Somebody asked what the student price was again and what the 800 number was to call to register for the course. And I believe, Mike, there's a discount for students. I think that includes that. That's a 20% discount for students.
Yes, the right? Student price is at $14.40. It's 20% off for students. And once again, that includes everything, and it includes their access to the content until they pass. That's a very important feature that no other course has. So
fantastic. Yeah, and that was the follow-up question: is what does no expiration mean? I think you answered that, right?
Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is, for any student, anybody paying, this is a lot of money, and we just don't see. I just want people to pass and be happy. So there really is no point of saying, well, you didn't get through all the questions that I wanted you to justify this, so now you're going to have to pay a fee equal to 50% or more of the course. That's just not the way we work. So one price until you pass. It's that simple.
Mike, got another technical question. I've worked for a company that had a CPA as the top of our chain of command.
Right.
Is that considered as working under the direction of a CPA as far as the requirements to test?
Yes.
Okay, great. So they should be good there.
Yep. Yeah, that's as far as getting licensed, et cetera. That does work.
Mike, one of our attendees wants to know, is there a mobile version of the software? But I think the larger question, Mike, is are you guys cross-platform, and where can people take CPA Excel on? Okay.
So once again, another good question. So actually, we were one of the first to introduce this type of approach, which is you can work it online, offline. It synchronizes. We have optimized versions for our tablets, so they can get the same. I say same look and feel, but even a better look and feel. In the functionality of a smaller screen. So we work in that environment. All these things are synchronized, and we have various smartphone apps as well that are driven to the questions and to flashcards. So you can work it on anywhere. As we say in one of our, I think we might even have that somewhere here. Maybe not. I was looking. It's kind of an anywhere, anytime program used on virtually every type of platform that you might need to work it on. Is that good, Mr. Johnson, or is there anything else?
I'm sorry, I was typing away there.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Jeff.
Mike, you've been around a lot of students taking the test. What puts them in the best position in their career to take the test during college, right after college, or after college while you were working? And I think like to a bigger picture is it better to get some work experience than take the exam? What do you see most often?
Oh, well, let me put it this way. From your career standpoint, a CPA replaces your GPA. That's a starting point. So I strongly encourage you to immediately, if possible, take it after you graduate. If you're in a 150-hour state, and once again, that's something I want to throw out real quick too. Most students get very confused on that. They say, well, I need 150 hours to sit. In a lot of states, you don't. You only need 120. What the 150 is talking about is becoming a licensed CPA where you can perform and sign, the attest function, an audit opinion, right, on a client. So if you're in a school where you can start in your, say you're going to do a master's program, but your state's 120, ultimately you need 150 to be quote unquote licensed, well, go ahead. You can actually start studying and do these as you're in your master's curriculum. Now, if not, I strongly encourage you to do it immediately after graduation. Most companies don't hire until usually September. So take advantage of that window of time and start getting your sections done. I wouldn't go to work for a while, because this information doesn't get any fresher or newer in your head, and it only is more difficult to start 4 years out and 5 years out. You have relationships. Who knows? You might be already married, have kids. There's just too many pressures on you. So as soon as possible, take advantage of those limited restrictions on your life and get this test done. So the vast majority of students are, literally coming out of school and within either immediately or within a year or two at the outside are jumping in to prepare for this thing. Just because you're done with school doesn't mean you're done with school.
Right.
So get it over with, jump in right away, and then you're really free.
Mike, I'm going to have one last question as Jeff continues to answer the questions. I'm an intern at a CPA firm. Will working as an intern be applicable to the accounting experience requirement that I'll need, and would the CPA at my office be able to validate my experience to become certified? So does internships count towards the CPA exam work requirement? Do you know?
Usually it's an interesting question. I will follow up with that, and I'll talk to one of my big firm partners about that specific instance. Generally speaking, the internship is usually a credit course that is applied, toward a university degree. And usually that is not considered applicable for business experience. So having said that, Jeff, I'm going to actually take that one offline.
Yeah.
And by the way, if that student wants to shoot me that question directly to my email, I'll follow up that way, or I will shoot a response to you so you can post that, whatever is the most effective way to communicate that outwardly.
You got it. Mike, I just asked the person to email me, and then I'll forward it to you so that you have their contact information.
Okay, great. I'd be
Mike,
happy to get that one resolved.
I think the very first comment we got during the session was that the Wiley CPA exam plan works great, ! Best part of the Wiley Excel package. I think she's talking about the planning software that you built.
Right.
Why don't you give that a plug real quick before we go? Because that really is a fantastic piece of software that helps everybody get organized. I know you mentioned it earlier, but just
it's kind of something that I hate to go back and the first iteration of that I did 20 years ago, and it really is the foundation of your preparation. And when I say that, it's similar to that Harvard study I spoke to you about earlier, and that I've put together a plan based on other students that have gone through the process and have passed. And I merely have taken that process, I studied it along with several students and said, how much time, what are you doing, and ultimately was able to refine that process to a very effective process, including the number of questions I have you work. Those have all been studied pretty much in depth. So I know if you go through that tunnel and it accommodates each individual, it says, yes, I have 6 weeks to study. Well, here's your plan. Based on what you asked me, it's going to be 14 hours a week. Someone else has 9 weeks. Well, this is going to be 9 hours a week, and here are your assignments on a daily basis. So it is, if you're following the plan, you're going to succeed. And I force you into that planning bucket so that there's no excuses. By the way, 3 days in, 4 days in, 2 weeks in, you look at your schedule and you say, I'm already behind 4 assignments. It is a motivational tool. Without that tool sitting there, it's kind of in your head that, okay, well, I'll work on it this weekend and really put in some time in and really get some more stuff covered. The exam planner says, no, you want to pass? Here's what you need to do this week. Here's how much time you need to spend on it. And if you're not doing that, you're not following the benchmark and you're not going to follow it, what others have done for you to pass. So to me, it is the heart and soul of the preparation process is the exam planner.
Mike, last thing, and we'll start winding up. But and Jeff, you may want to chime in here too. Are you guys still hiring for campus ambassadors at any college campuses? I know you had some postings live on Accounting Fly. Are you still taking applications for that?
Yeah, we sure are, Jeff. Anyone that's interested in being a campus rep, and we can get you the more details on that, as long as you're going to be in school at least through December of this year, if you want to shoot me an email at Jeff Johnson, one word, JEFFJOHNSON @wiley.com, I'll make sure it gets forwarded to the correct person that can talk to you and find out what the needs are at your campus.
You got it, and I just sent that out to the entire audience as well. Fantastic. So, Mike and Jeff, thanks a lot for doing this. I think there's about 8 more questions, and if your question hasn't been answered, I know Jeff is busy typing away, and we'll answer your questions. I just sent to everyone on the call, Jeff Johnson @wiley.com. If you're interested in learning about their Campus Ambassador program, which is a fantastic program, or just in more questions about the CPA exam, please reach out to them. Before I wrap everything up, Mike, I just want to say thank you for your partnership, and thanks for always coming on and doing these calls. We had a good turnout today, and your passion for coaching on the CPA exam is obvious. And anyway, we're just grateful for all the work that you're doing.
Hey, it's a pleasure. I'm glad that you do what you do, which is help students. You know, it's always frustrated me over the years where students aren't aware of what they really need to do, and I think this is great that you provide this kind of outreach to them to get information that they really, really need. So I think what you do is fantastic, and I'm happy to continue supporting your mission and whenever you need me.
Well, thanks. As I close out here, I'll tell you that the rest of the week is really about career options, and I can tell you, if you ask anybody, anyone around the accounting careers, I feel like students understand a lot about big public companies and the Big Four. Take the time this week to learn about small firms, what an incredible entrepreneurial opportunity that is, or mid-market firms, and you know, this is what we want to be spending time talking about. Anything related to an accountant's future is content that we want to share. Right before we break, everyone, you're going to be given a very quick survey. It's 3 questions, essentially asking you, did you find this valuable, and what would you like to hear from us in the future? What would you like to hear from CPA Excel in the future? We would really appreciate if you took an extra 30 seconds to do that. And please join us for the rest of the webinars this week. I'm going to end the webinar, although Jeff Johnson and I have a few more questions to answer. I'm not going to kill it so that you can't answer the questions. So stay tuned, everybody, while Jeff cycles through these. And that's going to do it for today. Thanks, everyone, for being a part of this. And have a great rest of the afternoon. And thanks, Mike and Jeff. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.